All right, so my name is Jesse, and I am the lead on the Conservation Stories Canada project, in which over the whole course of the year, I'll be featuring stories of people saving wild spaces, wild species, and in general doing amazing work to promote conservation in Canada. Now, today I am joined by Paul Sokoloff, and he is a researcher at the Canadian Museum of Nature and a part of the Arctic Flora of Canada and Alaska project. Paul, thank you so much for joining me here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so one of the things that I really want to do as part of this project is give people a sense of the places across Canada. It's such a huge country. There's so many diverse ecosystems and places to go. And you've had the privilege of getting to go up to the Arctic on numerous research expeditions to go looking for plants. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about what that experience is like, what the Arctic is to you, what it means to you, what it looks like, and yeah, just share your insight.
I'd be super happy to. No, I feel very privileged, and you mentioned it there that it is a privilege to be able to go up and do this kind of research. And it's almost been 10 years now, I guess, since I've started to do this. And my take on it has really changed over the years because, my first response when I got up there was this is amazing place, this gorgeous, beautiful ecosystem, vast expanses of tundra, this like these beautiful islands in this fascinating Arctic Ocean. And of course, over time, you get to know a place a little better, and you know that okay, there's more than meets the eye here. And uh, when we're working up in the Arctic, we're also working up in Inuit Nunangat, which is the Inuit homeland in Canada.
Yeah.
And so, being able to reflect on thousands of years of it being Inuit homeland and the knowledge that is contained in communities is really cool. So I guess the Arctic is many things to me, but it's a very special place that I know not a lot of Canadians get to see because while it is over 40% of Canada, it's quite expensive to get there. So with the museum, a lot of what we try to do is show the Arctic and not just talk about with the research we do, but also talk about the environment itself. So we show that off through galleries. We provide spaces for Northerners to tell their own stories. And of course, if you're a botanist like me, you want to talk all the time about the cool plants that grow in the Arctic.
Yeah. Your reverence for this landscape, for the opportunities that you've had there is so palpable. It's fantastic. What is a big misconception that people might have? So if people are thinking about the Arctic, if they might want to go for the first time, what's something that a lot of people would go, oh, I never would have thought of it that way, that you get to experience?
Oh, that's a good question. I think a lot of people don't realize that it's really botanically diverse, and there are tons of different plants that grow all out across the land in the Arctic, in communities out on the tundra. You can find shrubs and willows. It's not snow and ice. Yes, those are important parts of the Arctic ecosystem in winter and spring and fall, but in the glorious Arctic summer, it's beautiful. I think another part of the Arctic that surprises most people is that they think it's different than southern Canada, and that's true. There are a lot of differences, but when you go up there, there are incredible opportunities to see that it's the same. In Iqaluit, you can go to an amazing coffee shop or to a brew pub, and so I think those are important misconceptions to battle. And then the biggest one, the one that's really important for us as Arctic researchers to dispel, is that it's this frontier, and it's not, it's homeland. And so it's really important for us to recognize that when we're working there, but also when we're talking about the Arctic, that it's not, this vast empty land, it's somebody's backyard.
Yeah. I love this. This is something that I've covered with a few other speakers on international destinations that they've had the chance to visit. I think when you grow up, you think of Australia or, Paraguay or any number of countries around the world as being such foreign places. And when people go to these places, they find that it's in so many ways similar to home. And you're right. People do have this conception about the North. Certainly when I was a kid, Yellowknife to me was like the rugged frontier, men with knives, and you're hunting bears for your food. And I mean, that may have been me as a 5-year-old, but some element of that carried on into my adult perception until I had a chance to visit in person. So I'm so glad we got a chance to tell that story. So when you're up there, what are you actually doing on your day-by-day work? You've gone up on an Arctic expedition. What does it look like for collecting those plants?
So your standard day starts with us getting up. We don't get up with the sunrise because the sun is already up, thanks to the midnight sun circling overhead. For me, coffee is a must. We have tea drinkers on the team, and that's fine too. But the caffeine is important. And then it really depends on every second day we're out hiking, collecting plants. And then on the other days, we're back in camp pressing them in plant presses to get them flat and two-dimensional so that we preserve the specimens for long-term study. So most of our days are out hiking on the land. We tend to spend time either based out of communities, working, maybe in an ATV, we take it out, or on a camp that we've flown into on a helicopter that's quite remote from the communities. And so often we might be a camp of 5 or 6 people and nobody else for hundreds of kilometers. And so, you've got a little bit of space to work in there. And we try to collect all of the plants that we see, at least one specimen of each plant, to say that this species was found at this particular place at this particular time. And what that does is that allows us to build a collection that anybody can use for research. But it also provides the proof that it was there, because, if I went up and said, oh, this white flowered species was there, Saxifraga cernua, nodding saxifrage, just for an example of one white flower species. Well, sure, that's fine, but what if I don't know actually what Saxifraga cernua looks like, and I'm just making it up as I go along? That's why we collect specimens, because it's proof, but it also provides this legacy that other people can use over time. And in that process, our team is part of this tradition of botanical collecting at the Museum of Nature that's amassed a herbarium of over 1 million pressed and dried plant specimens.
Yeah, so you have this repository that's unlike any other in the country. And I mean, you've painted this picture of an ecosystem in an area where, again, most people don't get to go there. Not everyone is going up to the Arctic to collect these plants. And so in your 10 years doing this, have you seen a change in the Arctic ecosystem? Have you seen a change in the distribution of plants, or heard stories from the communities that you work with about how it's been modified over time?
We've definitely heard stories from the communities, mostly bushes that are growing thicker than ever before, especially in the low Arctic. People have mentioned, we've seen the willows here, they're growing thicker. So one of the things that we're mindful of is that when we're going up collecting these things, lets us add to this long-term data set that is the collection. And so we can then bring multiple lines of evidence to bear on any of these change-based problems. So we have valuable information from communities and valuable information from collections. One of the other things that I've seen is, and this is really dramatic, in the Western Arctic, there's permafrost slumping along the coastline. And this is really detrimental to communities along the coast, like Tuktoyaktuk. And this is also a location in Canada where you get rare endangered plants and lichens. And so their habitat is slowly eroding into the sea. So by working to mitigate and ameliorate these things, we are helping communities and we are helping really fragile ecosystems.
Yeah. So these plants serve as the basis of these ecosystems. So if we lose these plants, as these distributions change, as we get species, moving their range northward, this really does negatively impact not just the individual plant species, but the human communities, the communities of animals there. Like, this is the case?
Absolutely. And there are lots of plants that are really important to caribou, to muskox, to herbivores. And there are lots of plants that are might not necessarily stand out as being the most important to a herbivore or to a community system, but they're interesting biodiversity and they're part of our natural heritage. And it would be a shame to lose them because once they're gone, they're lost forever. And so, while we're collecting lots of specimens, so we have a record of it, we hope that, our only record of a species one day doesn't just exist inside a herbarium.
Yeah. And I'm really glad you touched upon this, because certainly in the last few years, there's been a broader push to understand some of the different ways in which ecosystems are so important, the economic needs, the community support. But really, for me, my biggest draw of saving species, whether that be a plant, animal, fungi, what have you, is the fact that it has an intrinsic right to be around. I mean, why would we want to be in a situation where we are wiping something off the the face of the earth. It's so important to understand, preserve, protect these amazing species. And in the worst case scenario that we do lose some of these, it's really valuable work to be able to have this record, have this repository that you guys have built up. But here's hoping that that's not the case, and that we have many more amazing plants that stick around for centuries and millennia to come. On a much happier sort of end note than the potential extinction of species, I have to ask, because you were sort of dismissive of your tea drinking colleagues, I have to admit. And so for coffee, you have a favorite coffee at home? Like, so you're sitting at home now, you're in Ottawa. What's the best coffee?
That's. I mean, everyone's got their favorite, but actually, I'm currently drinking dark roast from Bridgehead, the Bytown Boom.
There you go. Okay, well, I'll have to try that myself. I'm an aficionado as well. And Paul, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. I really appreciate the chance to hear about your stories and all the cool work you're up to.
Thank you for having me, Jesse.